Hello, everyone, and welcome to another CANNAtalk session. As always, I want to take this opportunity to thank Canna for organizing these events, being leaders in educating, supporting, and developing our industry. This is a interactive session, so we encourage our listeners to ask questions as we go. You'll see on the bottom of your screen, there's a little Q&A box. You just pop in your question in there, and we'll try to squeeze them in to the conversation as we go. So please feel free to ask some questions. And so today's CANNAtalk, the topic came from feedback we received from the Canna community. A big thank you for that, by the way. And your comments, ideas, and feedback are always welcome. So it really goes around value that we bring, value that we put into our product, and how do we sell, and how does that reflect to sales. So we've all seen our industry peers and competitors invest in premium processes and order to stand out. But a quick question always comes up, like, is there actual value to putting that cost, or is this just perception? So let's jump in. First, we're going to introduce the panelists. Amber Craig, Fractional CMO at Spark Business Strategies. With a diverse background in media, advertising, marketing, design, and merchandising, Amber provides hands-on support that spans from strategic vision to execution. Next, we have Daniel Kurylo, Product Development Manager at Humble Grow, formerly known as Delta 9 Biotech. They're located in Winnipeg. So they're focused on growing small batch, high-quality cannabis in proprietary self-designed grow pod systems using standardized hydroponic growing methodologies. They've been around for a long, long time, and the system has been developed over a decade long. So really interesting. And thank you for being here, Daniel. And last but not least, Tom Devost. He's the president and co-CEO of Golden Peaks Cannabis. And at Golden Peaks Cannabis, they're family-owned craft cannabis farm that grows high-quality flower for the retail market in a state-of-the-art facility. And they're located right next to where I live in Dieppe, New Brunswick. And I had the nice pleasure of visiting the facility not too long ago. So, Tom, we'll start with you. Let's jump in. It's a conversation. So again, I've been to your facility. Very nice, very well designed, very thought through. I found very efficient, and that's what you and I discussed quite a bit. How you took pride of putting stuff into efficiency, and it's clear that you look at all things and you analyze before you make a business decision. And I want to highlight the business decision behind this. So, however, we've all been in the same situation. We've had recommendations and consultants come through and tell you, do this, do that, buy this equipment, a supplier, this equipment's better than the other. Do you find, this might be a loaded question, but we got to get right into it. Do you find that in general, we tend to over-engineer our grow environments or processes based on legacy practices rather than return on investment? So does it make sense as a business decision? And what have you learned along the way during your experience here in the cannabis industry?
Well, Nico, thank you very much for having me on here. So when it comes to overthinking things, legacy growers I think a lot of them try to seek perfection. And you don't necessarily need perfection. You just need to get 90% of the way there. That last 10% is going to probably cost you more than what you're going to get out of it. So I think sometimes, I won't say good enough is good enough, but I don't think we need to go as far as we need to at sometimes with regards to the little details. If you see some curly leaves a bit, maybe a little bit too much light intensity, well, in 3 or 4 days, that plant might grow right out of it. So I don't think some growers, they kind of panic when they see little things like that. And sometimes it's just best to leave things alone.
And that's very interesting. And you're coming from the perspective of when you're saying good enough, it's not, because this is kind of something I'm going to throw at Daniel a little bit later, between the difference between sales volume and flow through compared to quality. Who's to decide what's quality where you move your product? Like, that's a bigger, question. So right. I really like what you said about your extra 10%. It is very interesting because it is something that we want to question today. Are we meeting consumers' expectation, or are we going above and beyond for what, really? And then we'll dive into some of the reasons why maybe a little bit later. But
now, don't get me wrong. We strive here for the highest quality that we can produce here, and we've been successful at that. Our product has been selling very well for the 5 years we've been in business here. But the consumer, the average consumer, doesn't care for perfection. They want a good value, and a good product at a good price. Going that extra mile may not, you may not see the difference in the bottom line, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
very interesting, especially coming from a micro producer, organic growing and all that stuff. And we'll get into it a little bit more. I'd like to jump to Amber because she comes, with the retail kind of data and experience and really knowing. So I'm going to throw it right at you, Amber, on this one. Like, do consumers truly notice or care about all these differences that again, I'm part of those I like that premium and that perfect manicure and all that stuff, but the question of quality and sales volume is one drives the business, one kind of has weight with the branding. But so do the consumers care? Trimming, hand drying, these different certifications, is it just a perception, or market segmentation benchmarks? Like, is that still existing?
I actually think Tom really nailed it on the head, to be honest. Like, I think there is an industry perception, which is very real, because bud tenders absolutely notice and appreciate the quality that goes into, like, quote unquote premium product. However, to his point, like, the majority of consumers out there are certainly driven by price right now. And as much as we might hear anecdotal evidence that consumers do care about it, the data is very clear on what the market share looks like between value brands and craft brands. However, with one caveat, that is a growing trend right now, not just in cannabis, but all CPG is organic and sustainability practices. That is something that people are seeking out more and more often. So I do think that is an opportunity. And the other thing is, like, premium is really a marketing term. Like, who determines what product is premium? You can slap that name on anything. So I do think there's a bit of that. People kind of expect to pay more when something's labeled that way. But I think right now in the market anyways, people are definitely driven by price more than anything.
Price more than anything. It's I hate to harp on this, but it's not really something that I was hoping to hear this quick in the conversation, because I mean, there is, in my mind, there's always a place for the craft, and same as craft beer or the nice wines, and I'm seeing this as a bigger issue. Is more in a communication, and it can come down to the marketing capabilities in Canada that we have, right, or their lack of being able to properly educate. So it's really interesting. And where can people? And I always ask this when we talk to retail folks: where can they get some decent information on sales volumes and market segmentations?
Yeah, there are some resources available. There's always a ton of caveats to what's available, because it's based on the partnerships that those data companies have with retailers. So that can certainly be skewed. There's some decent information out of certain government boards that people can access, and certainly producers could access. I know Hi-Fire is often quoted in lots of different media outlets, so they have some data there. Groups like Headset are putting out data, but again, it's skewed based on what retailers that they work for, and if people are looking for something. So you'll always hear anecdotal stories about what types of products are selling the best. And of course, if you want to do the legwork, you could go through all the P&Ls of the publicly traded LPs and figure out, do some quick math, which would take a lot of work, but certainly there is some information available.
Okay, so it is out there, and you should be able to make some decisions according to that, or you should make your processing and production decisions according to what's being asked in the market. Thanks. Daniel, I'm quite familiar with Delta 9 Humble Grow. I'm going to use those terms intermittent, like the same. Delta 9
Yeah.
is kind of probably more known to most of us. You guys have been around for a long, long time. I've done some work with Bobby. Quick shout out to Bobby. I know that the level of data that you guys capture on a daily basis, because of the type of production you have, the multiple pods, and the way that your production cycle is pre-planned and on par. So shout out to the whole team that does that data capture. And over 10 years now, I think you guys got licensed in 2013, right? So it's a good 12 years in developing the company. So from experience, and I know you guys have gone through changes of different processes and tried different things over 12 years and the different regulations. What do you see as the biggest opportunity for improving your margins without sacrificing, and again, quality versus sales? Like it's, the quality attribute, let's just make sure that we are attributing them to the sales volume that you're looking for, right? So what are some of the biggest opportunities that maybe a newer producer, somebody newer on the block, could be looking at that makes a bigger impact for them?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me again. I think Tom kind of did a great job kind of talking about, the type of mentality you have to look at these things. There's no one piece of equipment you're going to bring in your facility. There's no magic wand to wave to make it all of a sudden work better. It's a lot of small little changes over time, which we spent a very long time. I mean, they started with giant garbage cans in a warehouse. It was the first crop they planted. Now we have 300 grow rooms, over about 3,600 lights in the facility. So very, very different. A lot of evolution. And looking at small things. So what can you automate or what can you digitize without taking kind of that quality eye off of it, right? If you're doing something every single day where you're printing out a form, putting that form on a clipboard, walking across the facility, putting a couple check marks, walking back and scanning it, it might be time to look at what's the cost of an iPad solution there, right? Where we have processes where there are people with clipboards and they use them, and we have paper documentation, and then we have heavily automated systems like like our fertigation system and stuff like that, where there's a lot that goes into it. So automating and digitizing the small things where you can find them. One big thing that we look at, and I think we'll touch on a little bit later, is not overworking stuff. If we dedicated our whole facility to have every single bud hand trimmed, not only would our production times go way out the window, our cost of production would go way up. And the reality of the market is, if that's going to go to extract or that's going to go to pre-roll, it's kind of lost in that, right? So that's a big piece of it. Purchasing and supply agreements. If you can find partners, whether it's packaging, whether it's, if you want to work with someone like Canna for material supply and things like that, try to figure out, and instead of just a one-time deal, what are we expecting this year? How do we work together to kind of get the best out of it? Where can we work on pricing? Price shopping is valuable, but having good partners that last in this industry is pretty rare. So if you can find them, lock in and do your best to be the best together. And then environmental control, cultivation planning, and mixing those really passionate cannabis people like Bobby, who just wants to grow, with some great data people, some great science background people who can really put that structure and kind of really tight SOPs so that at scale over 300 grow rooms, you're not making a little mistake that costs 100 grams per room. That adds up really quick. So a lot of little things is kind of the small thing. Unfortunately, there's no magic spell for me to give you here today.
No, but I mean, I think in general, you're saying is look at everything, and every little thing is important, like you just said, which in the long run of the day, I've been on those clipboards and signing in sheets when we, where I was, we had at one point 60 rooms and all hand sign in sheets. I mean, that's when we changed over to the electronic, like that was a game changer, right? So it is looking at everything, like you said. But one thing, and this is because I've had conversations with both you and Alexa that takes care more of the B2B, if I'm correct, portion of the business, and you're looking more at the retail side. But you did mention that if we look at hand trimming everything out of our facility, that would bog us down and then the cost and whatnot. However, Alexa did mention to me that sometimes, even on the B2B side, there is a benefit to doing the hand trim to put that little bit extra because you guys have streamlined, and you will get that little bit. But just to be clear, that probably reflects down to retail as well. But just to be clear, that means you hand select which one you really put the time in compared to just your general production. How do you come up to those? Which one you decide? Is that like already pre-defined, pre-sold? Like, this client needs hand trim and they're paying for that? Or is this something that you do ad hoc and because it's like a banger fire crop?
So a little bit of both, right? So we use, like you mentioned, there's a ton of data we use, and with that, you find strains that work. We can grow in 8 pods at a time. We do harvest 3 days a week. We have a ton of data to look at. Depending on if the rooms are HPS lighting or LED lighting for different strains, we kind of know what to expect when stuff is coming up, pretty within a reasonable potency range, within a reasonable harvest size. But you're right, 80% of that is kind of going to go into the general business category where someone's going to call, they're going to go, I got money today, I need 60 kg, let's do it. And they're going to do a pre-roll line. They're going to put it in a 14-gram bag or something like that and kind of play that value game at retail. Again, kind of what Tom mentioned, you're not stepping away from quality, but you don't want to overwork it. You want to do enough to get it to where it needs to be and not overdo it. But when, whether it's a client calls us and say, hey, you have a specific strain that we work with, we need it hand trimmed. It's going to go in whole flower. We're going to price it. We're going to sprinkle that magical marketing premium word all over it and spend the money. Yeah, absolutely. We can do it. We have a great team that can do it. They do a phenomenal job. Some of them would love to hand trim every large bud we have and sell it at retail for $10 a gram. But the reality is, the province we're in, how to get into different provinces, how that all works. Holding that top spot to do max volume through that premium setting is you're either a smaller facility or you're only going to hang that spot for so long. So from the retail side, I would love to hand trim the best big buds from every batch and have a line that does that. But at our scale, that doesn't always work. So
and it sounds like and it almost sounds like, and to Amber's point earlier about getting your right data and making those decisions properly, you're really using your data to make those decisions, because it sounds like there is still a place for hand trim in that craft. It's just really understanding the volumes and the throughput of that kind of segment, right? Thanks for that. So Tom, speaking of trimming, you've taken a different approach compared to quite a few people. It's not uncommon, though. I've seen other growers do that as well. But you decided not to trim in-house. So you're essentially drying on the branches, de-leafing, and sending untrimmed flower. What drove that decision to do that? Was it financial? Was it a physical space constraint because you are a micro? Or is it a capacity? Is it, the labor? What made you decide to do that? And are you still sticking to that?
So originally we were hand trimming here on site and then selling the trim bud to our clients. Then we started working with a processor that we've been working with for over 2 years now. They offered to trim our product for us. And we looked at that very carefully. The problem with us here in this facility is just, it's a space issue when it comes down to. We have a limited amount of drying capacity, and we have 4 rooms. So if you do the math, every 2 weeks we're harvesting. So that drying room needs to be emptied. So we needed 2 days to trim that crop, and to get the people that we needed 2 days a week every 2 weeks was getting to be very difficult. So when it was presented to us that we could give our processor would take it untrimmed and trim it themselves by hand, we jumped at that. We've been doing it for over a year now, and if we can stick that way, that'd be great. So essentially, it was a logistical thing here, and I mean, if you have less employees to deal with, it just makes life a lot simpler, basically.
And obviously you get a lower premium price for your product because it's unfinished. Let's call it unfinished. But the cost of trimming added on for you to get those extra pennies still
For
makes
us,
sense to you to keep it the same. Keep it.
Yeah, if you count the PPE and all the other things that go into it, it's kind of a break even for us. But we save on the headache of trying to constantly find people. It's hard to get the same people. I mean, people need to work. They need 40 hours a week. We couldn't offer that. So it was different people. So then you're always watching to make sure the quality is always the same. So it was getting to be a bit of a challenge. So yeah, we were gladly farm that off to our processor who trims it all by hand now. So.
And let's be like honest with each other and all that. Trimming costs greatly change wherever you are in Canada. Because I speak to people on a daily basis, and I've heard somebody say as low as 7 cents on certain like good indicas that are not too leafy, like a quick trim, and up to like 12, 14 cents for like a shaggy flower. That's amazing price for hand trimming. What's your trick? Oh, he gets migrant workers that are working 6 days a week, and that's by contract. They need to be there to work, and they're very, very enticed to be working. Then I speak to a smaller operator, a little bit bigger than the micro. He's in the mountains in BC where there's very limited labor. His trimming costs is completely inconsistent, first of all, because he can't keep folks at that wage, but it's up to 35, 40 cents a gram for hand trimming. So it's very difficult to really say, somebody should go hand trimming compared to machine trimming. It really depends on the situation, I believe, where you at, where your labor, what you have available, and really the market you're sought after. I mean, Amber, I can see you shaking your head, like whether it truly is a fully hand trim or machine trim and hand manicured. But just to finish off, Tom, with the new regulations and space, you can go 4 times bigger. I believe you still have room on your site to expand a bit. Is this in the picture? And would this change your whole trimming process? Sorry, not idea.
The additional canopy, we're looking into various options. We're even looking at maybe some outdoor fresh frozen. We're looking at different options here. As far as the trimming, I don't know if that's going to change the trimming at all. What might change the trimming a bit is the transparent packaging. Whether people start looking at the bud a little more closely and see, this is better trim than that. I mean, time will tell. That could be something that'll alter the market a little bit when it comes to that. But again, hand trimming, I think if you're selling a premium product, I think you almost have to be there. Lower end, probably not, but time will tell, I guess.
Very interesting. So great segue, because I have a question for Amber about the packaging and the new packaging and whatnot. But before that, I have a couple of questions that came from the audience. An anonymous question. I work with a couple of legacy producers, and after calculating all their costs plus overhead, I've gathered their cost is between $80 to $1.25. Is this comparable to legal? I would say no. And I'll just explain a little bit, and anyone else can take over. Those costs I see more on larger producers that have a lot more automation and efficiencies in place. If you're talking about a legacy producer that is growing craft on a smaller scale, it's definitely more than that. I've yet to hear craft growers hit that cost, because you do have the burden of other things that come into play that legacy market doesn't, like all the security additions and all the regulation that comes into play. So no, it's not comparable. You're definitely looking at more at $1.50 to start and up. I would say $1.25 is probably the lowest that a good craft producer is. I've heard some at $1.07. I was very proud to see those guys, but they kill it on the yields. That's what I'm going to say about that. Danielle, you're shaking your head a lot. Do you have something to add?
No, I was going to say, I think you're right. If you're hitting 80 to $1.20, what you're saying, like, amazing. But for a smaller producer, I'm thinking of some guys, even if they're just a couple people in the facility, so your labor costs are down and everyone's working like crazy. You're still probably higher than that. If you're a big facility like us and you have a ton of automation and you're super lean and you know what you're doing, you're still, if nothing goes wrong, yeah, maybe you can get down there, but it's very difficult. Whether it's the, even $1,000 a test, or at least, right, for a COA, for a full panel COA, the guys on the street don't have to do that, let alone all the business operating costs and benefits and these stuff for employees. That it's very different, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So to keep going on Tom's segue to the packaging, so Amber, how important is the visual appeal versus the actual cannabinoids or other factors that they are looking, terpenes and do you think, or not do you think, how much is the new packaging with the window may change this? Because I believe that the visual appeal had nothing to do with it at the beginning, because we couldn't see it until you bought it. That would be for return consumers. But this might be a game changer. I'd like to have your feedback on that. And are we going to all focus on hand trim? Are we going to go right back hard at that? We got to make sure that the impact has to be, make sense. I'd like your feedback on that.
Yeah, I would say, like, when legalization started, I think people were interested in seeing it. Like, sniff jars were super popular in 2018 because people never knew what legal weed looked like. And the ones that didn't get rid of it quickly definitely got rid of it when COVID hit. So that's kind of gone away for a while. So people really had to educate consumers on cannabinoids and terpene profiles. And I think consumers have gotten a lot better educated at defining that as a purchasing driver. However, people will buy what they can see. Absolutely. So this is a huge opportunity. And I think it's a really big opportunity for craft growers in particular, because now you have an opportunity to really showcase to a consumer why it's worth more investment from their budget to buy a better product. However, this isn't going to be helpful in retail locations that do not have product on the floor. And that's a regulatory issue in some jurisdictions where they can't have product on the floor. So it's only beneficial to have product visible in packaging if anyone can see the packaging. And again, it's not bud tenders you need to sell on this. It's the customer who needs to be convinced that quality is worth more money. The bud tenders and the people in the industry, we already know that it's great, right? So I think leaning into retail partners who have product merchandise on the floor and people can actually see that product, it's going to be really interesting to see how that shifts sales trends. And I'm looking forward to seeing like what it does for the craft growers, because I do think it's a big opportunity for them.
Very interesting, yeah, and I'm hoping that we will see a differentiator, because I think it's important that we do have that in our industry. That's what we don't have. Is we always talk about what's a value flower compared to a premium or a craft flower. We talk amongst ourselves all the time. We know what we're talking about, but the general consumer, all my friends that smoke with me on a regular basis don't know half of the stuff that I'm talking about, and they don't really care. I hate to say it, but they don't really care. So I'm hoping that this new packaging is going to be able to separate that market segment of the craft and be able to highlight, because I will say that I believe there is really, really good craft product out there that is fire, that is undervalued today because there is no differentiation between those segments. Very little of it, and I think it's got to do with education and of the consumer. And another question from the audience. In Canadian ag, farmers of specific commodities, they pay into a marketing budget to their producers organization, like milk and eggs, and we see some of these marketing efforts on TV and all that. So Amber, because this is probably a little bit of regulatory tiptoeing, would centralizing marketing efforts, would that even help, and would that better help lobby instead of us all trying to compete individually to say I'm better than the other because of?
I think it's a really great point. There are some places that are doing this where they have like cooperatives, for example, for smaller growers or even smaller retailers, and they can share marketing spend. I think it's been a challenge always for craft producers or micro producers that they don't dedicate enough budget towards marketing, which they really need to do to convince the consumer why they should buy craft products. So in order to, get better ROI, I think it's a great idea to team up with a bunch of micros and share a marketing budget to put some messaging out there in general to educate people on why it's worth spending a little bit more for certain additional processes or hand trim or organic certification, things like that. Because if it's a budget constraint issue, then that can be solved if you team up with other people. And obviously everybody has a common goal. And I think there's a lot of instances where collaboration actually really helps the industry. And I don't think people should worry about they're competing with each other. I think micros and craft growers really have an opportunity to work together on that.
And that was kind of a sentiment that was on our last panel about this. We had a big talk about politics because the elections were coming, and we were wondering what was going to happen with the new regs, with the micros and the increase of all that stuff. And there was so many unknowns. And the big aha moment of that conversation was bind together, have the same message, and really do all your efforts to push that same message as a group, because you'll get further. So essentially you're saying the same thing in the marketing. So really cool. And I know of some of these groups that do happen on Facebook and even on WhatsApp. I'm on a great group in WhatsApp. I think those are important, and it's not just to move product, but I think it's to help each other out. I come from non-cannabis industry horticulture as well, and we always had, the Nursery Men's Association, we had nursery foundations, we had, in the vegetable, it was the same thing, and in flowers, it was the same thing. So it'd be nice to see a little bit more of that in the industry. Thank you, Amber. There's a question from the audience. I know that I popped these guys on you guys as a surprise, but so Tom, Amber mentioned earlier something that really kind of stuck to me, and I'm glad it kind of for this question, because we talked about hand trimming and all that stuff, the extra value, and do we go and is it worth it and this and that. But she said that she's seeing an uptick on organic and living soils, and that actually has a little bit of weight to that cost or value that you're adding. So do you see that? Because I know that you are currently certified organic, correct, Tom? And
we're not certified. We grow in a certified organic soil, but we don't have a certification ourselves. And so it's interesting.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So yeah, I find that interesting because we started growing organic from the beginning, thinking that perhaps down the road we'd see a premium for the product. You go to the grocery store, you pay a premium for organic produce, organic meat, etc. We haven't seen that in cannabis, and I don't see it coming either. So just as a sidebar here, I often have the opportunity to go and attend some trade shows and attend some stalls with the processor that I work with. So I did that a couple months ago. And you have 300 or 400 people who come through the booth, and they ask a lot of questions, and you get to engage with them. And very, very few are asking about organic product. So it's kind of making me rethink whether, as a business strategy, it's the right way to go. We're not getting more for it. It's costing us more in labor and costing us more in inputs to grow organically. That's a fact. It produces a great product. Is it as good or better as what we could grow in another method? That's to be determined, I guess. We're currently running a test right now in some cocoa, and we're halfway through now, and we're going to see. We're going to see what the results give us. Or it's going to be based on numbers, basically. We cannot have any decrease in quality. We have to maintain our quality or better. And then we're going to look at all the other variables, and we're going to come to a decision as to whether it's what route we want to take on this. So it's interesting that Amber mentioned that she's seeing an uptick in that. There might be an uptick in interest, but I don't see an uptick in price. So where does that leave you? I don't know.
So are you saying it is more costly to grow, generally speaking, organically?
From what I'm seeing, it's a little costlier to grow in a living soil. Now, there's different methods. We grow in pots, so we change our soil every time. If we had beds, that might change the game a bit. There's other issues that can come with having beds, so you have to look at the whole thing. I'm not sure yet. It's an interesting little experiment we're doing.
You're not the first one, and you're probably not going to be the last one. But in New Brunswick, we have a little bit of an issue happening with the way the retail is controlled provincially. I find that their markups and stuff, it ends up being a little bit of a dumping ground for the rest of Canada. A lot of our premium cannabis grown around here gets better pricing in their pocket of the producer in other provinces. So we see quite the uptake of illegal dispensaries in certain areas of New Brunswick that are very successful. And
yes,
the top selling flower price-wise is LSO. So on the legacy market, they still see that as a premium. So again, I'm wondering if it's a communication thing, a branding, a marketing, right?
Certainly communication thing. Certainly communication, educating the customer is definitely has its advantages. But that's not really happening. You go to the cannabis stores here, and they're still pushing high THC product. There's an education process that needs to occur, not just at the consumer level, but perhaps at the bud tender level as well.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of our only. So our only avenue at this point is teaching the bud tenders so that we get our message hopefully properly out there, right?
Yes, they're customer facing. They see the customers all the time. They're the ones who can really get that communication out there. Now, we're fortunate enough that the processor we deal with has markets throughout the country and even some export markets. So if we were just selling our product here in the province, it wouldn't be the same deal here.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Funny little question before I get to Daniel. Who is Alexa? She's not the Android Hey Alexa. She works with Daniel, and we've had some great conversations for quite a few times. And I apologize that I just threw her name out there in conversation without context. So Alexa works with Daniel at Humble Grow. But Daniel, again, I'm very, very interested in your data and how you drive that data, because I've spoken to Bobby, that was one of the first persons there to start this operation, and quite amazing. Can you how much of this is used without compromising any, and I don't want to say plant care, quality, are you constantly changing things and looking at your data and making those kind of decisions that Amber was talking about, what the value is and whatnot? Are you automated, or is it mostly data centric?
We're collecting data all over that facility, and different teams are using it for different things. Ultimately, it is at the core and drives kind of that continuous improvement environment, where batch over batch, even if we've grown the same thing for a couple of years, maybe there's something we can do, try different lights, try different center table instead of two tables down the side, all sorts of stuff. So the advantage of 300 grow rooms is you can run a heck of a lot of experiments. And if you capture that data properly, you can learn a lot. So by keeping that environment and those processes in place, what we've been able to do over time and what we do through R&D and things like that is you can select genetics that, if it was just up to me and say, Dan, what do you want to smoke? Let's fill the facility with that. It wouldn't be what the market wants. I would be the happiest guy in the world. The market wouldn't give us the best price, and it wouldn't be the best yielder and most efficient thing through our facility, right? So, everyone knows the market wants a high potency sativa. Everyone knows the market wants plus 24% indica. Someone wants purple weed. There's all these things that people want that, maybe the legwork has been done with the customers on the marketing side where those bullet points resonate with people. And so, we'll go through, we're R&Ding, 3 to 6 probably different strains at any given time. Maybe we love them through product rating. Maybe the look is fantastic. Maybe the potency is off the charts. But if it takes 3 times as much to harvest and finish it, or it's a super stretchy sativa and we're growing in, relatively short rooms and there's 2 or 3 times the plant management required, you can love that strain till the end of the day. The business is going to decide that it doesn't make sense. So not getting so attached to those things and using that data to let you get better is kind of the way to do it. And it's really tough. Like I know, I think at least on your website, Tom had mentioned one of their kind of flagship strains is a Mac in the menthol cross. Now the Mac is one of my absolute go-tos. Anywhere I see it, I want to try everybody's. And we've grown a number of strains that are menthol crosses in our facility that we no longer grow, whether that was because of how much work it went into trimming. It's a little bit of an oilier, greasier kind of bud. So the drying and curing is a different recipe. So if our whole facility was menthol crosses, our finishing strategy would be very, very different. But we'll go through a handful of strains at any given time, kind of doing different things with them. We have a high potency sativa. We have some really killer indicas that have great flavor, and we've got stuff that yields great and tests high enough to get consistent sales, keep the lights on, and keep things moving. So we have the luxury of the facility to kind of juggle those balls. If you have to pick one, that's really tough.
But sure. So the advantage, I do appreciate you explaining the 300 grow rooms. Like that is kind of a game changer when you want to try stuff. Yeah. But the most important thing out of all the whole message is the level of data capture that you're taking. It's not just like, okay, it's grow room temperature and humidity for X number of days and stuff. It's labor at every step of the way so that you can see, because I've got yelled at before by operators and growers as a consultant, go in and I'm looking at the numbers and they say, this variety, get rid of it. They're like, what do you mean? They're like, just the best one. I'm like, what do you mean it's the best one? I was like, well, smell it and look at the flower. I'm like, yeah, it's beautiful, but your numbers are crap. Like the production on it is lower than anybody else. Are you looking at the trimming job? It can't stand on its own. So you got triple trellis on this crop compared to the other crops. Are you not looking at any of that? They're wondering why they're not making money, right? So the data. So I really like what you're saying. However, you're also capturing a pile of retail data. You're saying the purple and what the consumers are looking for. You're not swaying the decisions. You're looking at those to get the feedback to make proper decisions on cultivars or what the market is looking for. So I really think that's important. That sometimes our passion comes in the way of business. I always say you can only sell poutine where people eat poutine. So good luck with that, right? So thank you for that. I really appreciate it because it is important to be able to look at every little detail. There's no single big swing that's going to reduce everything or be the best grower. It's really looking at absolutely everything and constantly analyzing this data that you're accumulating. So Amber, if the market, let's assume that this window of packaging makes little impact and we continue to see prioritizing price over craft or whatnot, what should cultivators like? What should they pivot, or what should they be doing or looking at? Should we let go our passion and just 100% listen, and this roller coaster of an industry that today they want this and tomorrow they want something else? Like, how can we make a plan uh, to to make these decisions that Tom is talking about, that Daniel is talking about? Like, how do I make these decisions at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think Daniel said some interesting things there that are important. Like if you have the ability to diversify your portfolio, then it allows you to play in both camps, right? However, I don't think we should ever give up the idea that we should be producing quality product, because this is still a new industry relatively, and the consumer is continuing to be educated just like the bud tenders are, which means we hope that eventually they will value some kind of quality over the price. But if you are going to be producing craft product, you absolutely have to be investing a budget in educating the customer, not the bud tender. Bud tenders are sold. They love it. They are asking for craft product all the time. They will always recommend it if it's in their store. But if I come in and I have a budget in mind of what I'm going to spend, you need to convince me why it's worth more. So I think something I don't see very often from craft producers is they don't invest in things like trade marketing assets that can sit in a retail location on the shelf, or some educational pieces that will really call out what those unique qualities are of their product. I think that's really, really important. If you can't invest in a massive budget to do all kinds of advertising, focus on your retail partners and invest in some assets that can sit right there where the customer is making that purchase decision that could potentially sway them to try something a little more expensive. I think that would be my best advice on that.
Okay, thank you. And so to keep on education and whatnot, so thank you for that. Question from the audience again, and I really like this one, and I know the answer for New Brunswick. So wasn't some of the money the government bodies collected from the CRA revenue supposed to go to educating the consumers? Absolutely. That's like one of the top mandates of legalization, 100%. Have we seen it? Where is it? Where does it? How is it available? And the question is, can't we apply pressure? So in New Brunswick, I know there is that education fund. You can go on Cannabis New Brunswick and apply, but it really is very strict in regards to events and how it can be used. So I don't know how it runs with other provinces. I don't know, Amber, if you have some insights, and Daniel. But it's not something that I hear very much is used and quite openly available. But I'm open for some comments on that. Sorry to chuckle. No, nobody has. So that just means there's not a whole lot of that money going around, in my opinion. That's something
I think
that,
there
yes.
is.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So I was going to say, I think they are investing in education, but to be honest, I think the priority is like safety education and not necessarily like product differentiation and like educating people on cannabinoids and terpenes. And I feel like that's really secondary, and they've relied really heavily on retailers to own that piece of education for the consumer. I see tons of education coming out from government bodies, but it's mostly on like not using it and safe ways to consume it, and all the standard messaging you would expect. But it would be great if they were helping to support in some of those other things that were mentioned before.
Yeah, and it's still, we're still quite separated. There's another question about other kind of producer organization or something that cannabis could piggyback off of to have a stronger voice or more of an avenue. We're still shunned completely from the alcohol industry. We can't do half of the stuff that they do. I know somebody on LinkedIn I saw this week, they're fighting. They got a fine for participating at an event where there was alcohol and booths and tents and stuff like that. And because they had a tent there, they are being, they're trying to fight that. So no, we're still quite excluded. Doesn't mean that we stop. And I think we all need to kind of hold true and keep going to these conferences and pushing this. So it's very difficult to align the cannabis industry with any other type of other industries right now, because we're still I hate to say it, I think we're still a little bit of the black sheep of any type of industry, whether it's agriculture, whether it's whatnot. But to get back in questions and stuff regarding our topic of cost and value of production and processes, what are successful standards and certifications in cannabis that producers have adopted that actually justify the cost or the additional work to be obtained? So this kind of sounds like, is it worth it to get GACP, EU-GMP, those kind of certification? I speak enough, so I'd like to get you guys' feedback. Tom, you mentioned already the organic. So are you even looking at GACP? Is your product going internationally? Is this something that's worth going forward?
It's something we're discussing with our processor. They, as I mentioned earlier, they do some exporting. And we'd like to get our flower into that too. So it's something we're going to look into to see if it's worth it. Right now, everything we're producing is for the domestic market, and we can't really keep up. So we'd have to do an expansion if we wanted to go that route. So there's a lot of things to think about, whether that's worth it for an operation of our size.
So there might be a economy of scale attached to some of those certification processes. Okay.
Yeah. It's not cheap, the certifications, and the upgrades that you might need to do to your facility can be pretty costly.
Daniel, now you're in a different boat. You guys are definitely a much larger producer. Is this something that is worth it? Are you looking into, how do you navigate this?
So I mean, it's something obviously we've been exploring and looking at the export market, kind of with the changing domestic market over the last few years. But it's you kind of have to make a decision that's similar, I guess, a similar problem to that whole craft decision is if you're dedicating your whole facility to one thing, you're not going to necessarily be able to do the same thing. I know some great growers that you wouldn't know they were still in business in Canada, and they're doing better than ever because all they do is export and they don't have a customer-facing brand in Canada. And for someone who used to love and buy and smoke their flower, it makes me very happy. They're making a lot more money and a lot more sustainable money that way. But a lot of our best products leaving the country or go into another brand or something like that as a domestic consumer, that doesn't make me feel great. Obviously, I would love to have all the best stuff here at home. But again, it's a business. So ultimately, those decisions kind of get made where some people will do 80% of their facility for bulk and export. Some will do, just their best buds and small batch and really, really high end where you can hand trim it and get that super premium. But you have to decide, and you don't know what's going to happen. What happens if you are doing something great and someone can grow the same strain by name with a slightly better potency at a slightly lower cost? Now you're not the hottest ticket on the international menu or things like that. So it's very different competition. If you can get those international POs, the pricing on them is very good relative to most of the domestic action, although that is getting better as well. Time and money, take it out of it. You should have all of them. But when you look at it, is it going to be worthwhile? Are we going to get a certification that we're not going to have the volume to support? And now we've made this investment to get into a certain country that we've got something better going on, and we're filling our tank in other ways. So again, that mix of the passion, the science, and then the business side of it ultimately have to make those decisions. And for a consumer, that's unfortunate because I just want, I would love if every retail store was just filled with the stuff that Nico and I want to go and buy and have. But if everything's $10 a gram, like Amber said, most people are making a financial decision when they're in there. They have X amount of dollars or they have a certain amount they spend. And as long as the product checks the couple boxes they brought in the door with them, they're happy to do that. So it's a big decision. It's tough. There's no right way to do it. Everyone's different. But yeah.
It's really interesting because we are seeing definitely prices internationally a little bit higher. But what I'm seeing personally as well is the same kind of trends that are happening in any maturing markets, cannabis markets, where there's a big uptake of like really high premium to hit that market, to really be their number one, first on the shelf, that pungent, like I'm going to be here. But then the market does change. I mean, we see it in Canada where the value brand, let's call it the value brand, or the one below the premium, where it's a little bit more affordable, and the pre-roll market is exploding in Canada. And then we're starting to see that on the international sides, where the buyers that were buying 50 kilograms of craft premium are still probably buying 50 kilograms, but now they're looking for 50 to 100 kilograms of lower cost flower. They are also pitching now their value brands in these, newer markets. I don't want to say new markets because, I mean, this is Germany. We're talking about UK. But yeah, Amber, I'd just like to have your thought on this certification. Are you just really acknowledging the Canadians, or is this something that international, like, is there an aspect of it that we should be looking at? And to Tom's point, economy of scale, does that matter as well?
Yeah, I think consumers are like, they're searching online and they're searching with retailers for sustainable options, but that doesn't necessarily mean an organic certification. So like to Tom's earlier point, that is difficult to obtain. And the reason you don't see a big market share for that is because there's not that many people that have gone through the steps to do it. However, there's tons of LPs out there at all sizes that are doing some level of sustainability practices that maybe they need to be talking more about, because I think people do appreciate that and they're willing to spend more on something like that. But to Daniel's point, like, you can't sacrifice profitability anywhere. Like, if you're not making money, then something needs to change, right? So like, at the end of the day, it is a business, as we've all been talking about. So you have to make a decision that's right for your bottom line. And if the market is consistently telling you that they're not buying enough of what you have to offer, then it's time to switch up something. I don't know if that's a certification or it's a price option or it's a strain option, but that is why data is so important at all levels. But I mean, yeah, it is a business at the end of the day.
Wow, excellent closing words. I couldn't have asked for anything better, Amber. Thank you for that. I love the fact that you mentioned again the sustainability aspect of it, not just looking at your certificate with a stamp on there and that you can hang behind you or something like that, but also what are you doing for other value add. And that's something that honestly I didn't think of before this conversation, was these sustainabilities and what they're doing. And so it's really great to see that. But you really hit it on the nail on the head, where it is a business. We have to treat it as a business and make business decisions around that. And where do we get that? And that's Daniel's data and Tom's information and business decision. And Amber, your great knowledge of the industry and all that. So really data, look at that before you make a decision. I love to be passionate about cannabis. That's what these talks are all about. But passion rarely sells product, rarely makes a business roll. I hate to say it. So we need to listen to the consumers, and whether they're right or wrong, they're right. It's not us to tell them if they're right or wrong. So thank you very much, everyone. This is our time. Thanks for the audience for great questions. I keep looking to the side with my double screen. Really appreciate your participation on everything. And again, to the panelists, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And thank you all.
Yeah. Thanks for having us, Nico.